Stories I like are episodes of a series. These are some of my notes on writing an episode in a series. True story. Monday, May 23rd, 1966. My paternal grandmother, my dad's mom, gave me a book. It changed my life. I used to tell a very long story about this. Now I'm just saying it's a novel in a series, and I'm mentally and emotionally anchored on that type of a story. Decades later, I revisited writing novels, found a whole bunch of books about writing commercial fiction that did not exist when I was younger. None of the books were really helpful to me. Mostly the books repeated what other books said. This was years before Save the Cat and similar works. They weren't really about writing stories. Certainly not about writing good episodes of series stories. I remember I turned on television, sat down in my chair, the one my wife had bought from Ron Christie. And I switched away from the news channel my wife had left it on, because that's pretty much all she watches is news or documentaries. And I found a channel that showed old shows from the 1960s. Star Trek, Wagon Train, Big Valley, etc., Bonanza. And there were episodes of series stories, just like I like to read. So on and off for a few months, I made notes. I reread series novels, and I reviewed or saw episodes for the first time on these old shows. Now, you can find exceptions, but as under the bell curve, the big part in the middle, the climax of a good story was Captain Kirk makes a decision. The Wagon Master makes a decision. Victoria Barclay makes a decision. In each good episode, there are two distinct stories. Story of the continuing characters, Kirk, Spock, McCoy, and the Enterprise's journey. Wagon Master, Scout, Cook, Top Hand, the Wagon Train's journey. Victoria, her boys and hands, the Barclays' business journey. And the story of the guest stars. For the guest stars, this is a standalone story. It's not a continuing story. For the guest stars, this is either the biggest event ever in their lives or close to it. It's a very important story, or it wouldn't be here. Wouldn't be told. For the continuing characters, just another episode in their lives. For some reason, they have agency with the guest stars. They're either sought out by the guest stars, or they have some reason to get involved with them and their present problem. In brief, here's the story pattern I found. For television, there's a music intro, Bonanza, then the map of the Ponderosa, Pa, Adam, Haas, Little Joe, and then two guest stars. And at the time, those guest stars were not unknowns. They were knowns. They were sometimes big stars. And they were in the story because they were friends of, the producer or something. Now, in series print fiction and prose, and I take Doc Savage as an example, it's kind of similar to the same intro of the television series stories. Doc Savage's, this is just inside the front cover. How do I know this? Well, this is an old book, 45 cents, 1964. Brand of the Werewolf, Doc Savage. And what's inside the front cover? Doc's Amazing Crew. Doc's Amazing Crew. William Harper, Little John, and so forth. The crew. Pa, Adam, Haas, Little Joe. And what's the story about? Well, every story is the same. Together with their leader, Doc Savage, they would go anywhere, fight anyone, dare everything, seeking excitement and perilous adventure. Wow, that's terrific for a guy like me, young guy, reading that. But maybe you read Nancy Drew instead of Doc. Well, typically, cover illustration and inside illustration depicts Nancy in action, often in danger. Inside, there is a summary of the story without spoilers. Nancy's summary typically mentions the guest stars. Doc's may or may not. So here's an updated Nancy Drew story, originally published in the 1930s. The Clue of the Tapping Heels. So, Edward Stratmeyer. It's got a table of contents. And then a summary. Challenging questions confront Nancy Drew. And then a thief who steals the prized Persian cats. That's why there was a Persian cat on the cover. And how Nancy, she learns how to tap dance in Morse code. And here she is in danger. She's been kidnapped, tied up, and it's going to be bad news. All kinds of implied, but clearly not stated things are going to, the guys are going to do to Nancy before they kill her. They've been killing people. So they're not just thieves. So, Nancy. Now, as the story begins, the continuing characters are going about their life normal, don't want any trouble. Enterprise is on routine patrol. Wagon Train plans to travel its normal 15 miles a day. The Barclays and the Cartwrights plan to fill in the blank, maybe repair the fence. In any case, it's a normal day for the continuing characters until they encounter the guest stars. The guest stars have an inciting incident they cannot ignore. So pretty quickly, everybody is in Act 2, and there's conflict between the guest stars. And then they're in Act 3. Now the continuing characters, and this is vitally important to your story, get to use their tags. Mr. Spock uses his nerve pinch. Kirk departs from a space girl's bedroom, then gets in a fight where his shirt is torn. Scotty says, Captain, the engines, they will not take her. McCoy says, I'm a doctor, not a bricklayer. Kirk, Wagon Master, Victoria Barclay make a decision. The continuing character story needs have been met. The guest stars' needs are addressed. Sometimes at the end, one of them dies by gunshot. Kurt Vonnegut wrote, that's a convenient way to end a commercial story. That's why it happens so often. He hated that people took that for real life and ended some of their stories with a gunshot. And in any case, there is a ending for both guest stars and continuing characters. Ba, 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 ba. Nancy Drew, who is in effect a chaste wife for her dad, is back at home and all is well. Now, that ain't what the story construction manuals I read said. But that's the story I like. And next week or next month, go on to the next story, and it's pretty much the same. The stories that I liked and still like best are episodes of a series. Now, I've talked to some people and read many that say, no, those aren't any good at all. Series stories. Well, series stories, you got to read more than one episode or view more than one episode. And I just don't favor those. Matter of taste. But that I've just told you what I like and the basic story pattern.